So it says here that first, the original intent of the Clarendon County, South Carolina lawsuit in 1953 was for parity in the allocation of education funding. Under a separate but equal public policy, blacks wanted to stop the local board of education from giving white schools 4 times as much money as they allocated to black schools. So it seems like he's saying that the original intent of integrating schools was not to get black kids sitting next to white kids. It was to get the same resources that white kids are getting in their schools. So he says that second, the U.S. Supreme Court's Brown versus Board of Education ruling that segregated schools were inherently inferior and unequal. Oh, sorry, the ruling that segregated schools were inherently inferior and unequal was wrong. They are unequal when they are unequally supported. Instead of integrating and busing black students into white schools, the Supreme Court should have ordered the Board of Education to bus more money. So he's saying instead of busing the kids out of their own neighborhoods into these white neighborhoods where they have rocks thrown at them and get beat up every day, he's saying we don't need to be next to white people. We just want access to money. We want access to our taxpayer dollars. So he says instead of integrating and busing black students into white schools, the Supreme Court should have bused more money, better instructional materials, better trained staff, and newer equipment into black schools. Third, research studies conducted in Norfolk, Virginia, and other school districts revealed that black children are not performing significantly better in integrated schools than they were in all black schools. So your kids are not doing better in integrated schools than kids were doing before integration occurred. Moreover, some schools showed either no progress or in some instances academic achievement gaps that were widening rather than closing. Fourth, integration made black people guests in America. Integration has been used to justify closing black schools, firing black teachers and administrators, busing black children, assigning massive numbers of black children to special education classes, and depriving black children of the advantage of being a majority population. Finally, in 1990, that's a big deal. Actually, let's pause with that. So he says integration has made black people guests in America. It took away power that you had because your power comes from being together, not by being diluted. He says that integration has been used to justify closing black schools. Has anybody noticed any of that in your city? I know in Chicago, I've seen a lot of black schools get closed. Let's see here. Justify closing black schools, firing black teachers. Again, what I see with integration is it's kind of like we can take better care of your kids than you can. So come over here and let us drive the bus. We're going to put them on this bus with the white kids, and we're going to drive the bus. So that what that does is that basically kind of says, okay, black people are a commodity, including your children. We're going to have them in our systems and et cetera, so we can get that government money or whatever the case may be. But we don't want you to have any control or power in this space. So you start to feel less powerful. You start to feel unempowered because you're in the space where you're basically being kicked around and told what to do. You have other people basically running the whole show. They get rid of the black teacher that's going to go advocate for the black kids. They get rid of the black principal. They get rid of the black contractors and suppliers. And so what does that do to the community? Well, that means that one, think about this. I mean, schools and kids and all that, that's an industry. That the educational system is an industry. So they pretty much said, we want you to be fuel for the industry. We want to make money from you, but we don't want you making any of that money. We don't want you to have any of that control, any of that power. And we get to indoctrinate your children into our way of thinking, our way of life. The best thing we can do for a black child is to make that black child just like a white child. And that is unfortunately such a painful, sad reality. And that's what you're seeing right now. So that's why you see your communities, many of your communities just dying and dead because they pretty much sucked out all the resources. One of the most valuable resources on this planet is human beings, human capital. They call it human capital. You knew that. I mean, during slavery, you were a valuable commodity. They could get a mortgage on a slave. You could use a slave for collateral, all these things, right? So effectively, by integrating the schools and all this other stuff and integrating the other parts of the economy, they were able to commodify you and make money from you without necessarily having to share anything with you. And so what does that do with your black professionals? That leaves them broke, struggling, begging, powerless, They're black kids that graduate from college every year. Millions of black kids graduate from college. They have no place in their own neighborhoods that they can go get a job. They can't. The only choice that many black college graduates have when they graduate is to go work for a white person. Am I lying or am I telling the truth? Tell me this. A lot of y'all graduate from college. How many of y'all were able to go back to your own community and find a damn job? Nobody. You were forced to go to their community and work for them. So this is the wealth gap that we talk about every day. You have to understand these things to understand where the money is going. So let me keep reading here. So on page 98 in the book Powernomics, Dr. Anderson's book, in case you just came in, you can go to powernomics.com and get a copy. He says education reform number 2 that he would implement is control public and independent schools. Since 1977, the U.S. Supreme Court has issued a number of rulings that blacks can now use to regain control of public and private schools within communities that serve their children. These schools must be restructured. The mission, the curricula, budgets, and teachers to serve the immediate economic needs of those who control them. Without that control, blacks cannot direct or use schools for their purposes. Okay. All right. How does a community get control of its schools? Many majority black urban areas provide instructive case studies in the types of problems blacks will encounter as they seek more control over their schools, especially public schools. Detroit is an example. Detroit was a leader in locally controlled schools in the 1960s. The movement that started there spread across the nation. Now, Detroit is a leading change in the opposite direction. White control of black schools and their students. Detroit is a majority black community with a black student body, a black mayor, black dominated city council, and an elected black school board. Local control should have meant black local control. However, as is often the case, it did not. Now, what's interesting is that Dr. Anderson wrote this about 30 years ago. Look at Detroit right now. Look at Detroit right now. Detroit is the biggest urban plantation I have ever seen in my life. And Detroit is just one of many cities that's in that same predicament. I mean, I'm sorry, if you're from Detroit, I love you, but y'all living on a plantation. This don't make no damn sense that people who are not black have so much control over the resources. What is going on? What is happening here? So in January 1999, Michigan's white governor, John Engler, proposed that the Detroit public schools with a 98% black student enrollment be taken out of the hands of the elected local school board and transferred to one appointed by the mayor. The governor also proposed that the mayor appoint a representative to the Detroit School Board who would have the power to override and veto any actions. This political maneuver essentially transferred control of the Board of Education from the electorate to the governor and the mayor of the city. As expected, once this transfer of power took place, the governor appointed a white representative to oversee the predominantly black Board of Education. Whether the schools are predominantly white or black, located in an urban city or not, they are always under the control of whites. So while parents in non-black communities are getting more control over their schools, black communities are losing it. Whites have control of black schools, whether they take over public institutions or establish underfunded charter schools, a voucher system, or implement similar conservative concepts. While charter schools can be developed to advance powernomics principles, at present, most charter schools are underfunded and lack the support and ancillary services that they need to be successful. They compete with and undermine public schools. So, um, let me throw something in there with this. With Dr. Anderson, he's talking about charter schools, and he's talking about school as a place that you go to outside of your house. I just want to reiterate that school is a place that can actually be inside your house. Just like with my business, my wife and I run our businesses inside our house. We don't get up and leave and go to a place of employment. She still works for the university, but she's hardly ever on campus, especially since the pandemic. I think education can be done the same way. And here's an even deeper part of that idea. Not only do I think that we can educate our own kids, this is why I created this whole book club. I kid you not. I said, if I'm reaching 1 million black people a week and all this other stuff, we can educate our own kids. I can give millions of black kids access to a professor if they want one, if their parents value that. Okay. So you don't have to go to college to get all that. College can be right here. But the other piece of that is I think it goes deeper than that. More important than giving your child a good education is giving them the right culture that leads them to value education. What I have found is that I could sit there with our kids and force them to learn things and shove information down their throats and constantly, say learn this and learn that and learn that. And some of that's called for. But really, what's even more valuable is if I can light a fire in them that makes them want to go and acquire more knowledge and information in specific areas. So and that comes from their value system. So what's interesting, I'll give you an example. Today, my 12-year-old sent me a link to a TikTok content creator who does really great Black history stuff. I can't remember her name. And I was super happy that my 12-year-old daughter was sending this channel to me because these are the things that she watches on her own. She wants to learn things on her own because we instilled in her something more important than education. We gave her a value system. It's almost like persuasion. When they talk about persuasion, I had a friend who unfortunately he had a sibling that committed suicide. I don't want to sound sad or depressing, but he did. And he said that what I realized a year later was that I talked to my brother about his problems and I was giving him solutions to his problems. And he kept saying, okay, okay. But he said, I realized later that he never actually bought in to anything that I was saying. And so what happened was he kind of talked him into it sort of, or kind of explained it and told him what to do. But he didn't get him to actually internalize what he needed to do, right? So what I think with our children is that the goal, in my opinion, nobody's better at doing this than the parent or the primary influencer of the child, is to get them to internalize what they want to do. So as important as like what you actually teach the kid, this is just me thinking here out loud about this. um I don't really think so much about what I'm teaching the kid. I haven't sat and read powernomics to any of our children, actually. I've never sat down and said, we're all going to read this together because I said so. You know what I do? I do stuff around them and I talk to them about things in a way where they understand that to be a productive, relevant Black person in this world, you've got to understand powernomics principles. So then what happens is eventually when they walk up and they're like, hey, let me hear more about what you're talking about, or let me read this, or I saw this on the internet, or they're wearing pro-Black t-shirts or whatever. So they're going out and consciously seeking knowledge that is consistent with the culture that we've established in the household. The culture we've established is pro-education. The culture we've established is pro-Black. The culture we've established is built on economic strength and prosperity. So at that point, they're driving the car at this point. And I know with pretty good confidence, at least I believe so. Sometimes we're not 100% accurate because kids are crazy, but I believe that as they make decisions in their lives, remember 99% of their decisions are going to be made without me or their mother around. They're going to make decisions that are pro-education, pro-Black, pro-economic security. Do you follow what I'm saying? I hope that makes sense. Focus on shifting the culture. You exemplify that in everything that you do. When you're having conversations with other adults in front of the children, have those conversations in a way where where they're listening to mom, or they're looking at dad, and they're thinking, "Oh, okay, so this is what you're supposed to do as a grown up. This is what Black people do." And I kid you not, our kids, they don't even realize how rare it is to grow up in a house with two college professors running the household. They just think that that's normal. So literally, we'll sit around at the dinner table and have conversations with the 12-year-old that would be held in a graduate school symposium. And she will be participating in these conversations because she thinks that that's normal. Okay, so do that. Build the culture, create the culture, and then I think the education and stuff will follow, because that culture and the values will shape the type of education they pursue, the types of things that they want to learn, the things they want to be good at. I don't think our kid's going to grow up wanting to become good at, twerking or killing people, because that's not in the culture, okay, of the house. All right, so let's see here. So Dr. Ansel on page 99 in Powernomics, he says, whether the schools are predominantly white or Black, located in an inner city or not, they're always under the control of whites. And then I'll skip forward. He says, whether it's vouchers or charter schools, Black parents will try these new education strategies, seeking options for their children and beguiled by the promise of a few dollars, which are insufficient to provide a complete education. Within the next few years, it is not difficult to project that social conservatives who argue for tax cuts and options that divert funds away from public school will successfully destroy or at least severely cripple the public school system, which they pretty much have. These growing trends contribute to the loss of control Blacks have over their own educational systems. How can blacks exercise more control over institutions within their own residential neighborhoods as they rebuild them into communities? It will not be through civil rights, equal opportunity, or social integration. All have failed blacks. Control must begin by using Supreme Court decisions to gain control of the money that supports schools. The old adage that he who pays the piper names the tune still applies. All states assign substantial powers to local school boards. The bulk of school funding comes from local communities and not from the federal government, from federal or state governments. Since black communities pay taxes, they must have the greatest say in how their schools operate. Like white communities, they should control their schools. Otherwise, there is reason to question whether blacks should collectively withhold payments of those taxes that support a school system that they cannot control locally. Today, white government agencies and corporations are intensifying their economic control over black schools and using them to benefit members of the majority society. Across America, corporations are taking over black schools under the guise of supporting the voucher system, charter schools, and privatizing public services. The real prize, however, is the more than $100 billion that is spent annually in urban school districts for building construction, school supplies, textbooks, food services, testing programs, and internet infrastructure services. So remember, your kids are a cash cow. They're putting $100 billion in these urban schools, even the ones that are failing, and they're all lining up to become contractors and to make money at these schools. Um, let's see. They are sought after prizes not necessarily because they have the largest budgets, but rather because their money is an easy target. They do not face significant internal competition from black people, nor do they encounter cumbersome or restricted procurement standards. Corporations use many tactics to pry open the black community for their own economic benefit, and the techniques are much the same regardless of the particular area they target. A frequent technique is to hire a credible black person as the interface. The interface gets a nice salary, and the company gets a direct pipeline into the source of profit they seek, which is, in this case, the schools. Because blacks have such a weak sense of community, it is sometimes hard to deconstruct those quote unquote opportunities to find the catch. If blacks are going to control schools, they must recapture funding. It is the state's responsibility to fund schools, but control is a local decision. By following the money, blacks can take conservative programs and use them to their own advantage. They can set up special independent schools, whether they are charter schools, religious schools, or a private academy. So let's see here. So he says blacks could require that new monetary controls be established that would track the funds allocated for each student, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so I'm going to jump forward to his education reform number 3. This is on page 101 of the book Powernomics. You can go to powernomics.com and get a copy. Cooperative and group learning versus individualism. Public and private schools, based on the Powernomics plan, must teach children to work and learn cooperatively as members of a team. White society credits Anglo-Saxon rugged individualism with development of this nation. Accordingly, they place great importance on educational programs that teach children to compete against each other. Individualism in schools is a form of educational Darwinism, or survival of the fittest and brightest. It is a form of selfishness that encourages a child to be self-centered, to outdo and profit at the expense of another child. This is the same ideology that drives this nation's political and economic systems from which black people have systematically been excluded. If black children are going to successfully compete, they will have to experience countervailing educational practices that play to the strengths of black people as a community. So this goes to what one of the things that we started focusing a lot on in the Black Business School, which is relationships. George C. Frazier is one of the partners that comes into the school all the time. I like George because George teaches people, particularly our people, how to network with each other, how to build relationships with each other, how to work together with each other. My wife, I love bringing my wife in because she is a relationship therapist. She helps us overcome the problems that become barriers to the formation of relationships, which is the fact that the majority of us are traumatized and easily triggered, which can cause the breakdown of relationships. It starts in your family when your daddy wasn't around when you were growing up, or maybe your siblings stole money from you, or you grew up in a neighborhood where people were getting killed. All these things affect your ability to form relationships, which inhibit your ability to work together. But let me just tell you, the world of economics is always a team sport. If you look at big corporations like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Netflix, whatever, those are economic teams, those are economic groups. They are working together as a group. There is no one guy named Netflix who runs this $250 million or $250 billion company. There's no one guy named Apple who controls this $2 trillion entity called Apple. It's thousands and thousands of people who are all on the same page, who learn how to overcome their differences and find some way to work together. They have a uniform standard code of conduct, code of behavior. They wear the same clothes. They're in the same gang. They follow the same principles, etc. So they can all achieve the big goal of making Apple one of the most dominant corporations in the world. Kids have to be taught this at an early age. This is another reason why hip hop culture is not healthy for our children. Not all of it, but some of it. The toxic hip hop culture. Let's say that, because toxic hip hop culture, all you've got are a bunch of egomaniacs bragging about how great they are and how they're shining and they're better than other people and everything else. And it separates that individual from the group, and it gets us into this weird kind of hero worship where we're all waiting for Superman to carry us off into the solar system, when really no black man is going to save black people. No black woman is going to save black people. Stop waiting for a messiah. What's going to save black people are going to be black people working together. It's going to be institutional thinking. It's going to be collective thinking, collectivism. So this is these concepts actually come more from the left. They come from socialism, communism, Marxism. But then capitalism teaches you how to make the money. So I don't think black children should be trained to be Marxists. I don't think they should be trained to be capitalists. I don't think they should be trained to be socialists. I think they should be trained to understand all the different ideologies so you can find a way to build collective strength economically that will allow you to accomplish your goals. If you're working alone, if you're working by yourself, you probably won't accomplish hardly anything. And then at some point, you're going to run into a group of people that are going to do better than you, because you can't be everything to everybody all the time. But if you learn how to form healthy relationships with other smart people and work together as a collective, which comes down to basic things like being a good person and not being an egomaniac, that goes a long way. I just know so many people some famous people who are just such pricks that nobody wants to be around them. The good people don't even want to work with them. And somebody raised them to believe that, especially as a black man, that if you are the man, you got to be the alpha. You got, I got to dominate everybody. That's stupid. Learn how to work together. Learn how to be cooperative, and stop thinking that cooperative behavior is a feminine concept. There's nothing feminine about a man who understands the importance of the collective and the importance of the group. And all these principles are critical to understand, because people who think that way tend to be more successful. They have more money. They're safer. They're better off. Their families are stronger. They just have more success in general. So let me keep going here. All right. So on page 101, Dr. Anderson says at the bottom of page 101, he says that one of the biggest weaknesses in the race is based on the Willie Lynch theory of divide and conquer. Teamwork is left largely to sports. We need less individualism and more togetherness and group cooperation. Instilling the values and advantages of group cohesiveness in most cultures fall upon the shoulders of basic institutions: the family, the school, and the church. But since so many black families are broken and dysfunctional, why is he literally saying exactly what we were literally just talking about this. He says, since so many black families are broken and dysfunctional, our schools and churches have to pick up the slack. And the schools ain't doing the job either. So one of the reasons why I think you should be very careful about what we say about the black church is because the black church, when it's at its best, that is one of the few institutions you have left. You don't own your schools. You don't even own your families. A lot of you don't even have families. A lot of us didn't have families. My father was gone before I was even born. So a lot of, but I had a family. I mean, we came together, and what we did that actually worked well with my father that adopted me, that was the source of our strength. That established a culture that made us better prepared for success, right? But if you think about scenarios where our families fall apart, it's just really hard, and it's very traumatic to try to succeed in that kind of environment. So he says here, let's see here, to reverse some of the inappropriate behavior patterns of our race, it is important that the black child's early school years be devoted primarily to instilling a strong communal spirit and developing its effective cooperative skills, teaching your child how to play well with others. Don't raise little pricks. The nation was founded on the affirmation of individual liberties and rights, while it was holding nearly 5 million black slaves hostage as a group. Beyond the rhetoric and myths that admonished blacks to behave as individuals, they were always treated as a group in practice. Pursuing the individualism myth left blacks bereft of group self-interest and group-based support structures. Teaching children to live as individuals is a philosophical design that works best for white children. They can afford to be individuals because they are the majority, and everything in the society is designed to support and accommodate the white majority. It is minority groups that are hurt by the concept of individualism in a society in which wealth and power follow the numbers. Understanding of vulnerabilities associated with individualism has not escaped many minority subcategories of the majority society. Jews are a good example. As a religious minority, they stay together as a group. While they encourage Black Americans to seek social integration, they themselves do not seek religious integration. They understand that in a society with constitutionally approved religious pluralism, maintaining a separate religion works to their advantage. So instead of social integration, Jewish solidarity should be an instructive model for Blacks. One of the major reasons that Jews have succeeded economically and politically in America is that Jews move as a group. Jewish families and their religious institutions instill a sense of community and groupism in young Jewish children early in life. Listen, please listen to this. Years ago, a successful Jewish businessman told me that Jewish schools teach cooperative economics. The young students are reportedly taught that, quote, whatever they want to buy in life, somewhere there is a Jewish person who makes or sells it. They teach this to their kids. They teach this to their kids. This is crazy. They teach this to their kids. They say, look, anything you want to buy, there's a Jewish person that sells it. Go find a Jewish person. And I remember thinking about this when before I got married, and and somebody said, would you marry a white girl? I said, no. And they said, why? I said, I don't hate anybody, but if I'm looking for a good woman, there's a Black woman somewhere that will fit the description. No matter what you're looking for, there's a Black woman out there somewhere for you, right? So that desire, that innate value system that leads you to look within your group to find the solution to your problem, this is something that Jews teach their children as a cultural value. Culture, 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 culture. This is culture. This is not, you could be from this community. You could be Jewish and not spend 1 second on a college campus. But your likelihood of success is high because you've been educated on a certain set of cultural values that will guide your behavior. You could be illiterate in Jewish, but if you know what it means to be Jewish and you spend time around Jewish people, you're going to make decisions in a certain way that will be more likely to lead to your economic success. Let's read a little more, then we'll be done for tonight. When successfully taught, this lesson of mutual support and cooperative economics guides Jewish people throughout their adult lives and keeps them united and economically strong at a fundamental level. In groups, children can educate each other and learn to get along with each other. Research indicates that learning in group activities can provide double benefits. Students in groups functioning as learning communities can master academic subjects collectively, but students in the groups also learn roles. They learn how to be leaders and followers. They learn how to share and how to care, depend on and accept each other's contributions to a team effort. Group learning guides students to identify group problems, amass their collective resources, and look within themselves for answers. The responsibility rests with educators to develop curricula that make effective use of group teaching and learning methods. Essentially, group teaching and learning can help to concentrate the direction and quality of learning, to foster new patterns of behavior, and to eradicate cross-purpose activities. Whew, I think that's good. I'm going to stop right here. That's enough for us to digest, I think, for this week. I hope that this resonated with you. I hope that we internalize some of this. I know I did. I know it reinforced certain things with me. I'm just telling you, I can just tell you as a guy who's done some stuff and got some education, made some money, whatever, all these other things, made a lot of mistakes, learned from those mistakes as much as possible. I can really tell you that every day that goes by in my life, the more I learn about the importance of being able to work with and relate to the people around you, and how those healthy interactions and relationships can allow you to do things that you just cannot do on your own, versus the other outcomes when you get so self-absorbed and caught up in what you're doing and how great you are and that you're the best and everything, and how that can cause you to kind of be stuck on an island. So I think that generally speaking, what I'm picking up from what Dr. Anderson wrote in the section that we read today is we've got to really work on whatever healing is necessary for us to be able to come together and find ways to create mutually beneficial scenarios that allow us to all succeed and win. Okay. So, speaking of that, just a reminder, don't forget the All Black National Convention is coming up October 28th through the 30th. I hope you'll consider joining us. We're going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina at the downtown Sheraton Hotel. All the information to join the convention, if you go to boycewatkins.com, it's all right there. We have spaces. If you want to get a pass, of course, you can do that. If you want to get a children's ticket, we have a children's curricula. You have to sign up for your kids early so that we can know that they're coming. We also have discounts for senior citizens, things like that. And if you want to be, if you're a vendor or you want to sponsor, you have a black-owned business, we have spaces for vendors and sponsors. Just scroll down boycewatkins.com. You'll see stuff there. Also, last but not least, the hotels, they discounted the rate significantly for us. So don't pay the regular rate. The Sheraton's not the cheapest, it's about $300, but I think we got them to drop the rate to $139. So if you'd like to join us, I hope you'll consider it. It's so you can go to boycewatkins.com. It's October 28th through the 30th. Okay, everybody. Well, it was real. It was good to see you, and happy powernomics to everybody. And I love you, and I will see you all soon. And what age is appropriate for children? You know, at some point I'm gonna do a straight Q&A on the convention, but in our kids program, we like for the kids to be 7 and up. I think 7 is the lowest age. If they're babies, they're not prepared to take little 1-year-olds and things like that. But I think 7 and up is the age that they pick. Okay, so have a good night, everybody, and love you, and I will see you all really soon, and take care. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Okay, let's see. Jabral, uh, anybody who's in here soliciting people to inbox them, you're going to get blocked, so I want you to know that. So let me block this fake account, Jabriel. Yeah, there's like a fake Boyce Watkins that comes in every now and then and stuff like that. So I gotta get rid of the spam. So y'all have a good night, everybody. I'll see you later. Okay, take care.